Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maura Keefe. I'm one of the scholars in residence here. Welcome to Pillow Talks. Our final Pillow Talk of the season is next Saturday, titled Leading Dance Theater of Harlem. My colleague Teresa Ruth Howard will be in conversation with Robert Garland, DTH's artistic director, and the company makes its return to Jacob's Pillow starting on Wednesday. Also, watch for announcements of Pillow Lab residencies and their presentations tied to that, and ongoing news about the reopening of the Doris Duke Theater. There is much going on these grounds beyond the Summer Festival. Now on to today. The title of today's talk is Searching for Goya. We borrowed the title from the stunning work that's in the Ted Shawn Theater this week by Noche Flamenca. I'm excited to get into the conversation today, so I'm going to introduce my two guests only very briefly. But first, a note. I know some of you were in the performance this afternoon, and Soledad Barrio was not able to perform this afternoon. You can come back in a couple of days and see the video from the performance yesterday that was recorded, or you might be able to get a ticket to tomorrow afternoon's performance. Just wanting to note, she's fine. She was just not able to perform today.
But the show was great today. It was amazing. I was blown away. That was great.
Making room for some other talent. Yeah. All right. You may realize now that this is Martín Santangelo, who is the artistic director of the highly acclaimed Noche Flamenco, founded with his artistic partner and wife, Soledad Barrio, in 1993. Noche Flamenca creates a diverse theatrical body of performances through song, music, and dance. And a goal of the company, as they say, is how to bring to the theater one of the world's most mysterious art forms without the use of tricks or gimmicks. Santangelo not only serves as the artistic director, but also collaborates on the choreography and music. Anne Leonard is the Manton curator of prints, drawings, and photographs at the Clark Art Institute. She's been there since 2019. Prior to coming to Williamstown, she was a senior curator of European art and director of publications and research at the Smart Museum of Art and a lecturer in art history at the University of Chicago. She earned her PhD at Harvard University, and she has written and edited articles, catalogs, and books way too numerous to mention here today, but you can find them online. Thank you both for being here. It's true, one more bio. Francisco de Goya, Spanish. 1746 to 1828. He was a neoclassical painter, and according to ArtNet, can be considered as the last of the old masters and the first modern artist. Maybe Anne, you'll have something to say about that. His obvious talent was apparent to the royal aristocracy at the time. He was made a court painter in 1786, and this was really kind of the peak of his career. But he developed an illness between 1792 and 93, rendering him deaf. He withdrew from people and began to sort of become introspective. As the same time as he's making official commissions and religious paintings that people might know of his work, he undertook a series of experimental dark paintings, which were published first in 1799 under the title Capriccio. He filled many albums with drawings and translated the first of those into prints with this collection. Martín, I want to start, before we even get to Goya, I want to just hear a little bit about you as a consumer of visual culture. Like, you go into museums, tell me about your life in New York or in Madrid.
A consumer of visual images. Yeah. Wow, okay. Well, we're bombarded. Now, is it consumer? I mean, we are consumers of images. Yeah, no, we are bombarded by images, I'd say. But what do you mean?
I mean, I'm thinking a little bit like it's... Before we talk about why Goya and this project, I'm just sort of wondering, like, how do you go to museums to see art for inspiration, for relaxation, for energizing? I mean, we're surrounded by these gorgeous photographs. What is your relationship? And I mean, not in pursuit of your own work, but as a citizen of the world. I guess.
No, I mean, I'm in love with film. I'm deeply in love with film, is image. I steal a lot of film. Language to put on stage. So I think that I think as a consumer, I just try to composition. My big thing is to steal or to borrow composition, to learn composition, more deeply composition. Kurosawa, for example, or Fellini, their compositions are just extraordinary. I saw last night Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse.
Yeah.
What was that number they do in? He's a
Bandwagon.
detective or
Oh.
Which one? Girl Hunt. Girl Hunt. Did you see? Did you all
Tim
see
Shea,
that?
film scholar in the
Did you
house.
see
Thank you.
It's unbelievable. When he walks into that green room and he opens the door and there's a shot from afar, it's like a Fellini. I'm sure the guy ripped it off from Fellini, whoever was choreographing or directed it. It's unbelievable. You should all see it. It's extraordinary as far as images. Which brings me back to the answer. So what I get is a deeper understanding of who we are, people,
And so
who we are.
primarily you're thinking about moving images. I mean, because we talked yesterday very briefly about a trip to the Prado you made.
Right. Moving images are very helpful for choreography. I've stolen from everybody. Bullet, Steve McQueen. Did you all see that movie? It's a great film if you haven't seen it. There's a great scene where he, in Alien, they stole it, the same exact shot, when he shoots in the airport in San Francisco, and it's kind of the zenith of the film, and he realizes who he is in that moment. He realizes, Steve McQueen, that he's the anti-hero, and he's a bad guy. And he realizes who he is in that moment. And it's the opening of a reveal of bodies, reveal death, a person he just shot. And it's just unbelievable. So yeah, moving images are great for choreography, for dance, for theater, for any kind of theatrical language. But then, still like Goya or many other artists and photographers can give you movement also. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be moving. Mm-hmm. But I guess what I'm consuming, there's a lot of bad stuff, but what is fun to consume is that things that you go, oh, and you see something about the human condition.
So Anne, also before we talk about the Goya images particularly, could you tell us a little bit about the scope of your position at the Clark? What does it mean to be the curator of prints, drawings, and photographs? Because that seems like an enormous responsibility.
Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Prints, drawings, and photographs, which are collectively known as works on paper at the museum. So I think probably most people who have visited the Clark think of paintings, sculptures, and of course our special exhibitions. But we have, as part of the permanent collection, close to 7,000 prints, drawings, and photographs. And they spend most of their life in storage because our responsibility is to take care of them for future generations. So they're very light sensitive. So we store them, but they are also available. And it's important for everyone in this hall to know that you can come to the Clark, you can make an appointment, you can see Goya's, you can see anything you like. I mean, Martin's living proof, he did it.
It's amazing, it's incredible what they have.
And our collection spans the Renaissance to past 1900, and there's great strength in artists besides Goya. So that's just a resource to be aware of. And I look after that collection. So it means mounting exhibitions and doing catalogs and also seeking new acquisitions because we're always adding to the collection.
And I just have to acknowledge that some of the images that we will see in a moment were donated to the Clark. Could you say
Well, yes, and I think Norton Owen only alerted me just minutes before we started here today that the donors of some of these Goya images were actually very connected to Jacob's Pillow, which is something I didn't know about their provenance.
Lola Jaffe was a longtime board member, and she and her husband Edwin donated 6 or something of the images we're going to see in a moment. Which,
yeah, that's a wonderful connection, which I didn't even know of. So, thank you.
So now we're starting to head a little bit towards Goya, and I want to know. I've read the things
Where's
that
Goya?
say it's the middle of the pandemic, and you get looking at Goya images. I mean, how were you looking? Are you looking online? Did you have a coffee table book? Like, how did you start looking at the images?
First online, I saw the Disparates. They're called the Follies, which is a series that he made towards the end of his life, in the later part of his life, and they're. I mean, they're modern art, right? I mean, they are. And I'm still trying to discover what it is. The disparates. I think it's never going. It's forever changing. The disparates. Disparates are follies, but it's not really a good translation. It's disparate is like in Spain. It's like when something absurd happens, which is a good title, right?
I mean, it connects a little bit with disparate, just in the idea that it's incongruous, it doesn't make sense, and it's mysterious.
Yeah, very mysterious.
So just sort of like we all were when we were stuck at home, browsing around, and they caught your attention, or were you on a quest?
I think I connected with the disparates because it's irrational. And I think Goya, what he brought out for all of us, it's not just irrational, but he did dive deeply into what is irrational and how to express that in art. And I don't think that any artist prior to him did that. No?
It's so modern because...
I'm so frightened of you. I get so nervous. But okay. You just correct me.
No. I want to hear what you have to say because you said it. I mean, it's very modern. He's working what the Caprichos are first released in 1799. So this is still 18th century, what we think of as Enlightenment, but. Yeah. He was on a different plane. He was seeing things in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so, even today, I mean, even in 24, they're startling, they're scary, they're elusive. There's a lot of meaning there still to unpack.
Yeah, the irrationality and the disparates in the moment of the pandemic just hit me like a hammer over the head. And I just went, and since then, I don't think there's a day that's gone by that I haven't either looked at an image of Goya's or imagined him. He gets under your skin and he starts living there. And in a good way, but every now and then he kind of goes, hey. And you're walking down the street and you see something and you went, oh, that's what he meant. That's what he wants to say from that image. And they begin living with you. It's very strange what happens with Goya. It's very strange. He's a genius. He's one of the, I don't know, few geniuses.
I've been a little bit infected myself.
Have you?
Yeah,
Isn't it a trip?
and starting to think about this show and this conversation and just what am I seeing and what am I looking at, and that's beautiful. And so Anne, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit, pretend Martín isn't sitting here between us. You get a phone call or you get an email. This choreographer's coming to the Berkshires and wants to see what you have. What was your reaction to the initial point of contact?
Well, I mean, I know it's a setup question, but I just have to reply completely honestly that I was a thrill. I mean, those are the calls I love to get. I mean, I don't know who's in the audience. If I gotten a call saying, Mr. Big Shot art historian is coming to look at the collection, that's a little maybe less exciting. But if I hear there's a choreographer, there's someone from a different art form, there's someone who's going to bring a new perspective, that's extremely exciting. That was really fun.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
wasn't that really fun?
I'm coming back. I'm coming back.
You're invited.
I'm coming back.
But there was a lot to it was surprising, but I have to say, and I think everyone who saw this show here this afternoon can appreciate this deep connection with museums. And when we're talking about the Metropolitan, the Williams College Museum, the Clark, you did your homework in the sense of you went around and experienced these images, really delved into them, talked to a lot of different curators and other folks, and it really shows.
So that is actually, you started with the images online.
Yeah.
Maybe then you went to a bookstore and are flipping through
I started
his
going,
book or something like that.
Yeah.
When did you realize you wanted to see the original artwork, and why? What made you think I should look at an original and not just depend on a reproduction?
Oh, because it's like watching. It's like watching a video of dance, which was one perspective, or it's a flat. It's great. Or you watch it in a theater, and you can see the dimensions of it, really the dimensions. And so seeing a print of the first prints of Goya's work is, it's like you're just slammed in the face by him. It's like when you see, Van Gogh. Van Gogh's probably better example. I mean, that to see a Van Gogh live in a museum is just, just
Right, that feels like an example of the three-dimensionality of art, which you
Literally
don't see when you see a
three-dimensional. It's like,
postcard or an umbrella or whatever, that you finally see the painting, you're like, oh, this is what the fuss is all about.
Yeah. And there's, it's hard to see it in a book. There's so much stuff that's badly written and badly presented about Goya. A lot, most of it. So you have to go see the source, to see the actual source. And it's not easy because, like you said, the Prado, you have more. Well, the Prado has the black paintings and I think 2 prints of I don't know what from the Caprichos, and that's it. They've got 11 on display. That's it.
So is that your first?
And they have everything.
Is that your first decision? I'm going to look at what's in a museum and available. How did you know to be like, wait, I want to see what's in collections? Like that, I feel like, right, you just had to invite us all to ask you to come to the Clark and see stuff. Like, how did you know to ask to see stuff that was in collections?
I think Sharon is our producer, agent, and fixer of everything. The artist whisperer. I think you began to hook up. Because I said, I got to see this stuff, and I think you began.
So inspiration from unusual circumstances made you dig into new ways of making dance forms, collaborating with artists abroad at the same time as people couldn't travel, and seeing art. So that got you on this hunt. Yeah. The first work inspired a deeper discovery of the collection. So I'm curious. We're hearing a little bit about how the images circulate today. There's some in this collection, there's some here. I wonder, Anne, if you could take us back to 1799, how would the images have circulated in Goya's time? How would people have known about them?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because for the Caprichos, it's an incredible story in the sense that 1799, Goya indeed publishes the whole set of 80, and there's an advertisement, front page advertisement in what is it, the Diario de Madrid? It's like the main paper. So huge publicity for this series, and then after one day of them being on sale in the marketplace, they're pulled. Now, so there are different opinions about why this was. Of course, the Inquisition was alive and well, and so some people think that Goya was afraid of censorship, and he pulled them. And so I don't think that there's solid evidence that they were censored, but he may have preemptively censored them for himself from the marketplace. In any case, what it all means is that very few people saw that. After this big burst of publicity, very few people would have had access to the images at all. They went underground. And from that point, they were just unknown until much later, after Goya died. And the same is true, you probably know, for the Disasters of War as well.
Disasters of War,
right?
yeah.
Never published in his lifetime.
Unbelievable. Incredible, right?
So there's this kind of, there's mystery. I mean, people were searching for his work even during his own lifetime.
So do you think it had something to do with his status as a court painter, and this was they're so different from, and not wanting to jeopardize that kind of reputation?
Definitely. He had friends in high places, but they couldn't necessarily protect him, and I think he felt very, very. The message of the Caprichos is very anti-establishment. It's very sardonic. It's very critical of a lot of the government and society of his time. So he couldn't take that risk with the status that he had. And yet he let himself go. And this is part of the phenomenon of printmaking, is that it has, just historically, been a sort of underground technique. It's where caricature circulates, where broadsides, a lot of subversive material. And so it was an outlet for him.
Well, and I did read that he had a kind of extensive print collection himself, so he was not only making them, he's also had a Rembrandt or some other kinds of things. So certainly it was an interest of his as an artist to see what other printmakers are doing. Yeah, and then where you really see the influence is after his death. So and even in those first years, I'm thinking the Romantics in France, for example, in the 1830s, very soon after his death, they're beginning to discover. So someone like Delacroix, for example,
is taking his lessons in printmaking from Goya, metaphorically speaking. I mean, he's really studying this deep use of aquatint, these shades of gray, these deep blacks that you and I saw together, and thinking, I want to do that because it's so expressive. It's so expressive.
So, Martín, tell us a little bit about seeing the prints in real life. And we'll look at some of these images
emotional.
in a moment. Well, what is it about the quality of the image that changes seeing it in real life?
Well, one thing is time in front of a good image, that you have time. I remember when I went, there were such good prints that I could sit there and just look for 15 minutes at one, and you begin to discover things. Because he was very, very specific, Goya, so specific about things, and so you begin to see things that you never saw. You begin to see things that you never saw before. Yeah.
I've also been thinking about the difference between the subject matter, which we've touched on briefly, and we'll talk more about when we look at them, but also his talent as an artisan of printmaking. And if you could say something about that and the labor that goes into making the prints.
Yeah, well, again, the medium that he is so well known for in these sets in particular is called aquatint. And what was so revolutionary about it, just from a technical perspective, is that until a point very shortly before Goya began using this kind of printmaking was always linear. It was engraving or woodcut or etching, but you had to deal with lines. And suddenly, aquatint opened up this whole tonal range. And I won't get into all the sort of messy details of the technique, but the basic idea is that it allowed him to have these gradual shifts between tones and a whole gamut of grays, from the lightest all through to these really inky, deep blacks. And so the character of these prints is very particular and quite new. It's quite revolutionary for his time, and even after his time. He was absolutely a visionary in the way he used it.
Okay, so you've gotten this phone call from Martín, and he says he's coming. You now are like, oh, I have to focus on, of the 7,000 things that are here, it's time for me to focus on these 12, or however many are in the collection total. So how did you prepare for the first meeting?
Well, I'll be honest. I didn't exactly know what to expect. I should give credit to the Williams College Museum of Art, because they were really they were hosting the residency for Noche Flamenca. And so it was our colleagues at WICMA, Lisa Dorr and Liz Gallerani, who actually made that connection and said, we've got Martín here and he'd really like to come. So we made the appointment. So I knew already that this was something serious, because he had already been looking at the prints in their collection. They have Goyas. The Clark has some Goyas that the Williams College Museum doesn't have, and so together we were kind of providing this visual backdrop for his research. So it just, preparation, it involves pulling out some boxes, and but it wasn't I want to reassure you, it wasn't a huge demand. It wasn't a huge hassle. It's a joy. This is what we do, and this is what we love doing, because every time you pull out prints from the collection or anything from the collection, and you put it before new eyes, you learn something different. And I just learned, I've already told you in private, so this is genuine, I learned an enormous amount just from looking at those together. And you did look at them for 15 and 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah, I could have been there more. And I am going to come back. I'm not just saying it, because it is something to really have time with an original print of Goya. It's just incredible.
So these are not original prints that we're going to glue to the screen. We're going to see some reproductions, thanks to Anne. And Patsy Gay, Associate Archivist, is sitting behind the curtain here and is going to show us. And let's just start with the first one. And Anne, will you introduce us to what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so I put this one first because, as I remember, we spent quite a bit of time with this one. And I kind of want to give the microphone to Martín, but it's called Belos Consejos, or pretty.
Gabriel, how would you translate Bellos Consejos?
Pretty advice, yeah.
Pretty advice?
Yeah.
Pretty advice.
But you should really describe the cast of characters here.
Oh, well, it's a Celestina. Celestina is the, the mother whore. The mother of the whores, or the mother whore also. There was a book written before Quixote? No, before Gabriela? Quixote, yeah. By actually a Ladino writer who had to give a fake name because he couldn't say that he was Jewish. But he wrote La Celestina, which is a figure of the older woman who preps young women to become whores and to become prostitutes. And she was also a prostitute, so she knows her job really well. And she's it's Goya being very satiric, saying pretty advice, because it's the destruction of women. He knows that this young, beautiful, voluptuous, sensual woman is going to be destroyed in 3 or 4 years because of her profession, because of this old Celestina. Celestina is not a nice character. She's a businesswoman. She's a ruthless businesswoman. So I'm sorry, I have to, but that's what he's getting to that, and a lot of the expression of the young prostitute she's kind of innocent, strong but innocent, and the other one is weak and older, but knows exactly, for her. You can see the way that she's looking at her. She knows exactly what to do with this young one. And she's going to destroy her life pretty soon. And it's, I don't know, that's my interpretation to now. Maybe next week it changes because they change with time.
No, I mean, that was we talked about this, well, as you say, the satirical quality of this, and I like the way you described it, because it's kind of Goya pointing into the future, and a lot of what he does, even in his very irrational way, it's forecasting something that seems inevitable, and it's like all the more horrific because it seems like that there's nothing to do. Like there's just this is a story, we already know the end of the story, and there's nothing very pretty about it. And he conveys all that in this very complex image. I mean, we've focused on the two women, and rightly so, but everything that's going on in the background, and we spoke a lot about these props too, and I think you got into this a bit in the choreography.
So let's go to the next image, please, Patsy. This one is Tale Bearers, Blasts of Wind. How can you put this one next, Anne? And then we'll ask Martín to...
I have no idea what it's about. I love it, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I am especially sympathetic to people looking from the back row of the hall, because they're hard to see, and they really do merit. So you have to come to the Clark and see them yourself. But they, I think even at a distance, what you can see is a very supernatural creature, right? And there are lots of these in Goya. This kind of winged creature, and we saw some in the choreography today. So the blast of wind, I think this is referring to a kind of blast of wind. It's like a gossip or a rumor, and something that goes around and gets whispered from person to person, and again is probably deceptive or inaccurate in some way, right? These are the rumors that get around, but then become a kind of received wisdom. So then again, it's Goya using figures partly human, partly animal, partly supernatural, and creating a very, very strong commentary on human society.
So, Martín, we've talked a little bit about this, you and I, about the kind of well, you could decide to just make a tableau of that artwork and just have that be what you were doing, of any one of the Goya images that you were drawn to. You could have restaged those two women with members of the company. Could you talk a little bit about how Goya made room for you and your vision in there, or how you resisted becoming too too much at the mercy of the strength of the images to create your own work?
Yeah, because approaching an artist like Goya, you get scared and you go, I'll just let him do it, and you just put his stuff exactly what. And then I began as I begin to meet him and to know him, understand him up to a point. Then things change, and I can say I don't have to be absolutely literal with him. I can take what I'm feeling of what he's doing, instead of just putting his image in front of the audience. So it's being inspired by him, and it is like the title, searching for, looking for.
I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about is that these images, published in 1799, a piece that premiered in 2023. I'm curious for both of you to think about, like, how do these resonate for today, for people seeing them for the first time, for you encountering them in the, we're in the 21st century now, and how do they feel modern or present day?
Well, okay, I'll start, and then I think anybody who's revealing human nature so clearly is valuable in any moment. I mean, I've been able to look through his. He did one series of disasters of war, which was just images of war. I've been able to sit through it once to look at each print at one sitting, because it's over the top. I mean, it's just you just start weeping. Or vomiting about seeing how damn brutal we are to one another. He doesn't take sides. If it was the French or the Spanish, he didn't take sides. He just said, hey, this is how brutal we are to one another, period. He showed the brutality. There's no war correspondent that I can think of, photographer, that matches his images. Emotionally, when you look at it, you're like, what? And you realize how disgusting war is. How disgusting we are, how banal we are, how brutal we are, and how we just have no respect for value of somebody else because of territorial or religious reasons. And what was I talking about?
I was asking how they felt like present day, and I think you're expressing it.
So, I mean, that's resounding freshly right now. And it's a great time to go back to Goya and go, hey, why don't we sit down and look at his images of war? Because it's not about sides. It's about how disgusting we can really be, or how horrible we are when we are in war.
So Anne, I'm going to just build onto that answer and speak to how you want to say whatever about it being in the present day, but also a question about Goya in his time. Is he trying to capture the present moment? Do you think he's trying to document? I mean, in the disaster series particularly, versus the ones that feel more surrealistic.
Right. So first of all, I mean, I can't improve on what Martín said. It's exactly that. It's the horror. And I'm so glad you mentioned about going through one by one, because I have taught with the disasters of war, and at my old job, the version we had was in an album, bound. So all 80, he liked the number 80. So there are 80 capriccios and there are 80 disasters of war, and it's exactly true what you say. If you can. It's hard to get through all 80, and if you do, you're just sick to your stomach by the end.
Sick to your stomach.
You're
about
just
what we do to each other.
It's horrific. It's horrific, and he wants you to be horrified. This is the thing. So he wasn't prettying anything up. He's not a propagandist, and here again, you said this too. He's obviously on the Spanish side, but he doesn't consider the Spanish any side better than the French. They're all just. The amoral. I mean, they're all sort of caught up in this cycle of hatred and killing, and for no purpose. And so I think that's why. I'm not the first to say this, but I think that's why his prints have aged so well. Is that when he's talking about the war between Napoleon and the Spanish way back in the we're in the early 19th century. This is not anything that he is. So he can be documentary, And there are scenes. For example, there's a famous one of what's the name of the girl who's the defending Saragossa? She's kind of like a Spanish Joan of Arc who's like stands at the cannon and protects the city, right, from siege. So that's an incident that is like well captured, and he is recording that. But for the vast majority, they could be taken from any conflict at any moment in history. I mean, they're timeless, they're universal, and they are showing sort of what the worst of what we are as human beings, and that is very difficult to look in the face.
Can I talk about that? There's an image that he has of, what's her name? De Zaragoza. Agustin of Zaragoza. She's a hero, a myth of a woman who, the guys were dying, the French were invading his hometown, Zaragoza, and she went to the cannon and she lit the rope on the cannon and exploded. And if you look her up, it's a trip. You see this woman who's like this, with breasts like this. She's just like this, and she's tremendous. That Spanish Quixote, big-breasted women like this, and just tall and little, and it's just like unbelievable. What did he do? He got this short little version. He made her so small, so short, that she had to step upon dead bodies to light to make the cannon go off, which that's extraordinary right there, because it makes it human. You go, oh, she has to, and it's horrible also. And then the other thing, it's her back. And you're not looking at her butt, you're not looking at her breasts, you're looking at her action, which is this superhuman effort of this little woman going on top of dead men trying to light the cannon. And you go, and it's not Superwoman. It's not Superwoman saving Spain. It's not. It's a frail human woman, a normal woman. And you're going, thanks, Goya. Thank you. And it's just, it's horrible. But it's so he reveals who we are. And the worst of what we are.
So I want to...
and the best.
I want to switch because this is maybe going to feel like a strange question, but one of the things that I was thinking about in imagining your conversation, because why would I find out in advance when I can find out now, is that part of a lot of your scholarship and looks at the connections between music and visual culture, and so you are a musician and choreographer, and I'm wondering if you feel music in the animation of these images, and if there's a particular Goya image that we have on the screen that we could talk about from that perspective.
You might have stumped me with that one. I mean, music, it's funny. I think with Goya, definitely what I'm going to answer that question in a slightly different way, just because, again, from my experience, just looking at these images, sometimes on my own, but sometimes with like one-on-one with someone else, or sometimes in a classroom with students, the meaning is elusive, right? The meaning is complicated. It's multi-layered. It's hard to decode, and maybe decoding isn't the right word, but certainly in a class of students, they just want to know, what does this mean? Like, what is it about? And so the tendency, you'll notice they're all captioned. Goya gives these very short, usually 2 to 3 word captions. And there's a lot of ways to turn those words. So, but how this relates to your question is, I think there's often, the pitfall is you kind of think, oh, the meaning it's in the words. Like, if we can just figure out the words, then we'll figure out what the image means. And this is, of course, completely wrong-headed, because it's a trick, right? It's the idea that you can understand something by knowing the title of it, but you can't. If anything, it deepens the mystery. So, I mean, I'm not a speaker of Spanish. So, first of all, it's always very helpful to discuss Goya with someone who knows that language and culture fundamentally.
And the nuance of what those things
all the
could
nuances.
mean.
So that's extremely helpful. But then also just to realize there was this extra layer when Martín came of seeing these seeing these still images kind of in motion, or seeing them in more of a theatrical way than I ever had before. And I think because you brought that perspective as a choreographer, we approached them from a different way, and you unlocked something in them about the meaning that wouldn't have been clear just from looking at a still image and a title.
So then let me refine the question a little to just say, in thinking about putting together the production of Searching for Goya, that you are deliberately not imitating, but you are deciding the mood of the song, the mood of the music, and how it might relate. So maybe you could say something about that.
Music tells us what to feel. The rule of thumb is, in choreography or in film, or music tells you what to feel very quickly, and not intellectually, like quickly. Like film makes you, or the music. And what we're looking at is more intellectual, is slower. Music is quick and global. We can all associate with, we all understand instinctively something about a music. We'll all feel the same thing, or close to the same thing. So music tells you what to feel. Our eyes tell us what to think about. And words tell us what to really deeply think about. So it's quick, what we hear, we have to choose what sound we think. And I sit there with the musicians, and I go, do you think it should be this sound or this kind of song, or should it be happy, should it be sad? If it's sad, what kind of sadness?
Showing them the images.
Yeah. We sit down with the images with the musicians, the first thing I do, and we work on the music, or we decide the music. Or I come in with a decision of the music, and we refine it and refine it and refine it and refine it. I mean, we try to get that to that. So yeah, definitely those things. I mean, I'm obligated to put music on it. And there's some moments of silence on purpose in the show, because it must have been horrible for him. Because he was a rock star. He was like a rock star in Madrid. He had everything. He was making a lot of money. He was having anything he wanted, 24 hours, 7 days a week, whatever. He was the rock star of Spain, And then all of a sudden, everything, one part went out of the window because he went deaf, but also because of his values, his own values, and he made decisions. So, and he was deaf, which those things also, musically also, deafness, silence is, can be very deep also. If there's a lot of noise and all of a sudden you take that away, you go into an internal. So yeah, you can play with sounds a lot with his stuff. Yeah. He was also really good friends with Boccherini, who's a classical Spanish. He came from Italy when he was very young. He's Spanish though. And they would go out a lot and party and Boccherini inspired him also sometimes to do things, and so yeah. So there's a lot of music around him. He loved music and literature.
So I want to open it up for a couple of your questions, which I'm going to repeat so everybody can hear. There's a comment that perhaps if Goya were to title this today, it would potentially be misinformation. What do you think?
I'll go with that.
Yes. Yeah. He would find a word that would be even more elusive.
Because it sounds like that's what,
like bad gossip, or something like that.
You're saying that he didn't want it to decode. So there'd have to be a little bit more mystery in the renaming.
I mean, not that he didn't want to be mysterious, but he didn't want to
make it plain, or
he's multi-layered.
And I think it's the blast of wind. There is also something supernatural about that. It's figured in the creature in the print, but it's this idea that it's something that comes out. It's not almost human generated. It's something we can't explain the source, and that makes it all the more unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, he may very well have been saying, because how horrible the Inquisition was in this. I don't know, because soplon is also, those who speak out when they shouldn't, And, you know, the Inquisition would shoot their mouths off at anybody they wanted to. And they were shooting their mouths off about him and bad-mouthing Goya. They were trying to get the royalty to not work with him anymore. Thank God that he was, you know, he was the greatest portrait painter that, for me, that, I don't know, that's why I get so scared, but for me, his portraits are unbelievable.
There is one at the Clark of
Yeah.
an architect that he portrayed. It's a small portrait, but it's absolutely, you know the one I mean?
Yes,
I'm so interested at how the images led you to an interest in the artist himself, and that's become as much of the kind of your passion about Goya is not just the representation of the time that he was living in, but actually how he was operating at the time.
Yeah, yes, except I don't know much, because there's so much written about him that's myths.
You're the one who called him a rock star, so...
He was a rock. I mean, he was the highest paid painter in Spain, you know, and he was it. I mean, he was it. If you wanted a good portrait and you were from the royal family, you went to Goya, if you could get him. And, you know, he got to a point where he was like, you know, come talk to me, you know.
So the painting that's in the Clark's collection, acquisition or donation? Like, would the Clark have pursued a Goya painting in particular? Sorry, I shouldn't be quizzing you on outside your area.
They were a little more affordable when the when the institute opened than now. So that would be an extremely ambitious acquisition to make now. But back in the day, yeah, it was something that a museum could purchase.
Another question? Yes, here.
How does...
So this is asking for a little more elaboration on how you had the Goya images and how did it drive your creative research to actually land, just a little more elaboration on the creative process in building Searching for Goya.
Trying things again and again, trying things, seeing them. The first piece, for example, is a good example of that. We had different versions of it. We had a version without even a table, and which finally we went to that table and we went, oh, there it is. You know, the dream of reason, which is so important, that table, when he's sitting there and he's working and working and working, and the dilemma of, do we get to something rational through work? Yes, but we also get to things that are non-rational and that are horrible. Monsters come out, but those monsters are also wonderful. So it's an ongoing process of trying things until I'm happy with that piece, because I feel like the psychosis kind of comes out.
What I think you're saying also is that at a certain point you have to leave Goya behind and let the dance work speak for itself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It is. Yes, difficult. I'm doing 2 more Goya projects.
You heard it here. Another question. Yes, sir. So this is a question about the elements of the movement and music that's in Searching for Goya that we see people around campus now who are clapping their hands and stamping their feet, and he's noticing there are no castanets in the performance.
Yeah, actually, we do have a Goya number that's done just with castanets, which is brutal. The problem is that the percussionist, he couldn't make. He's not here. There are people in the company who play the castanets, but he's probably one of 10 who's like amazing. So I've been spoiled. But we use the castanets, just not in this. Yeah, but we do use it because it's incredible. It's like the sound of bones breaking. Yeah, comes from Ireland. The castanets, believe it or not, they're not from Spain. Yeah, they're from Ireland.
So thanks to that comment. This is a comment and an observation that, from her perspective, both the paintings and the prints of Goya feel deeply embodied. And that maybe the question is part of the reason why you were drawn to Goya not just the subject matter, but the very kind of invitation to think about the works in a fully embodied way.
I don't understand the question exactly.
So is it that it's not just the two-dimensional image itself and a story that you're interested in, but the actual rendering of the human form that says, oh, this inspires movement.
And inviting the observer to feel. Absolutely. I mean, the more I work on Goya, the more it's egotistical on my part, but the more I try to begin to understand the things that are wrong with me. I do, which is great. You know, if I can see him, if I allow myself, because you begin to see yourself. Also, you begin to see your arrogance, your stupidity, your ridiculousness, your own corruption, your own. Yeah, you begin to see things about yourself, which we all have. I'm not saying that I'm not the only one. We all have, and he calls them out. When I say he lives under our skin, talking about embodying, he does live under your skin. And you begin to see things about yourself with him. And he does smack you in the face. Not smack you, he touches you. He touches you in the face and he goes, hey. And you go, oh, okay. You know, he does that about yourself. He does that a lot of women. A lot of women. He really reveals a lot about women. No, it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible how he loves women. He's in love with women. And then hold on, and also animals, which is incredible. He loves animals, and through his images of animals, you can understand human beings. There's one image. Can I talk about one image? Is that
Do we have?
This is.
What's it called?
With the golden beak.
Oh yeah.
We have the chinchillas, Los Chinchillas, number 4.
It's an image that we don't have, but it's one of his.
Okay, well, we have an animal.
An animal.
Perhaps. Nope.
No. He has tons of animals. There's one image of an animal which, later when he was in France, he had to leave Spain because they were going to cut his balls off. Basically, the Inquisition. They were going to kill him, so he left. He self-exiled himself, and it's incredible. The image is it's one of his little drawings that he did for himself. There's a guy in a kind of he's a handicap with these big, fat, swollen legs, and he's in not a wheelchair, like a carriage. And he's looking down, he's older, his life is over, he's not motivated anymore. And what happens to us with age, with physical limitations, and he's just looking at the ground going, that's it. The carriage is being drawn by a dog who's like this. And he's basically saying, I will take you, my master, or my we don't say master, my owner. He says, I will take you to the end of the world and further. Again and again, and you're just like, and you see how beautiful, and it's about him, because he was self-exiled in Bordeaux. Physically, he was a mess. And one part of him was like this. At the same time, he woke up every morning and he was inventing new techniques at the age of 78, almost to the day he died. And he kept going and going and going. And that image is about him. And it's told through the eyes of a dog saying, I will take care of you. And it's absolutely beautiful. So that image, if it lives in you every now, I'm getting older, and I go, ooh, hold on to that image, Martín. Hold on to that thought and that inspiration that he had. And the other part, which is accepting, we're limited. Our legs go away. We can't move fast. We can't walk. But go on. He's amazing.
So I want to say, in conclusion, not only should you search for Goya, you should go see some art, you should go to the Clark, you should hear some music, and you should see some dance and do some dancing. Thank you both so much today.
Thank you.